speakers will have given you a short little introduction onto both the opportunities and the challenges that young female entrepreneurs faces in our region today. But to further dive a little bit and set the tone for this discussion, I would like to invite our new Deputy Director of the UNDP Asia-Pacific, Christophe Baoué, and I'm really sorry, Christophe, if I mispronounced your last name there, and would like to invite you to please say a few words to open the discussion for today.
Thank you very much, Marta. We'll be very happy to do so. I'm really happy to join all of you for this exciting event on Women Entrepreneurship Day. So let me first extend, a very warm welcome to the entrepreneurs, all the partners and the UNDP colleagues who are joining us. I was looking at the chat and I was impressed to see that we have many participants from many different parts of the world, from Pittsburgh in the US to Brisbane in Australia, and then many countries of the Asia-Pacific region. So warm greetings from Bangkok to all of you. The theme that is bringing us today together, which is, how to harness the transformative potential of women entrepreneurs, is one that is of paramount importance for the development of the countries in Asia-Pacific, and one that is very close to UNDP's heart. It has to do with the economic rationale. We do realize as UNDP, the importance that entrepreneurship, small entrepreneurship, SME, startup, social enterprises, including the women-led one, have for the economic tissues of the countries we're working in terms of employment, in terms of economic activities, in terms of income generation. But we're also very much aware of the social benefit that women entrepreneurship brings to the countries, to the society. Because when women own and control productive assets, and when they participate in economic activities, it has a number of ramifications in terms of reduction of poverty and inequalities, in terms of health, education, and more investment going into it. And then gender equality that goes beyond the economic sphere and actually go into the social and the political ones. So that's I think, extremely important. But we are also very much aware, and I think all of you are listening experience that, and the video was a very good illustration of it, that women entrepreneurs face a lot of barriers. Barriers that can be related to stereotype, to cultural perception, that are actually economic related, lack of financial access, banking systems, lack of information sometimes even legal barriers, or lack of skills development opportunities. And this is actually a major hindrance. And when we are talking about young women, we're talking about a double liability, because it's, young women entrepreneurship suffer from, the woman related barriers and the youth related barrier. And in Asia, I have to say, I saw the figure, it's actually very troubling to know that about 36% of young women are not in employment, in education or training, compared to 13 of young women. I mean, both figures are too high, but the gap between them is very illustrative of the, the gender disparities that we face in the region, and also the youth employment issue. So we actually also, we need to do something about it. And I think it's also very timely to have this discussion, because we're in the context of COVID-19, and COVID-19 has made young entrepreneurs, which used to be the engine of economic dynamism, has made them a vulnerable group. So that's one more reason for us to act. And we have to keep in mind the enormous potential that we were, in all the countries of the region, that we were to derive if we were only able to close that gender gap. And that, that benefit has actually been costed. It's actually, estimated that the economic opportunity that would derive from the gender gap being closed would amount to a staggering $4.5 trillion in the Asia-Pacific region, in the GDP, by 2025. So there is a very compelling reason to try to close this gender gap. The question is what to do. And I think that's really something that we're going to debate today, to discuss, exchange experience. But let me just say, from the UNDP point of view, we see an articulation of three important dimensions. One is really working on policy and regulatory changes. This can be overall gender policy, it can be more specific financial regulation that would offer more opportunity to women. So that's policy, regulation, legal dimension is a very important one. We also very much engage as UNDP working on the ecosystem, on the perception, on the gender stereotype, and that's very much part of our advocacy work. And the third dimension is very targeted actions. And in all the country offices that we have in the Asia-Pacific region, you see UNDP teams working very much with women entrepreneurs, with government, with community group, to try to do something very concrete actions to address the gender gap and to support young women entrepreneurs. And we'll probably hear many illustrations of the very fascinating work that we're doing in these countries. So, it's good to have this discussion. It's good to have such a turnout. I have to say, I'm very happy that this discussion is part of a very, very stimulating, very exciting initiative that is called the Youth Collab. Which is it's a partnership between UNDP and the City Foundation. And I want really to thank and recognize the City Foundation for being such a good partner of UNDP. And the Youth Collab is actually very dynamically evolving, growing in many countries of the Asia region. And so this event is placed under the Youth Collab, but also with the involvement of the UNDP regional gender team, which is also very, very active to address the issue that I just mentioned. Before I conclude, let me really thank our panelists. We are very happy to have such a panel with Esmeralda from Samoa. Very happy to see the Pacific with us, with Lara Hib from Pakistan, with Sagar from Moonshot Venture and the Indonesian Women Empowerment Fund based in Indonesia, and our colleague from UNDP. I think we have a very good composition, very good diversity in this panel. So we'll be very happy to hear from you. And thank you, Marta, for being the facilitator. With this, thank you all for joining us. And I hope really that we'll have a fruitful, concrete, and a stimulating discussion. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Christophe. I think your reflections already have set a high barrier for our further panelists to really dig deep into this issue. So I think that can only be a good thing for the rest of the panel. I also realized that I think you have already said before to us that you would really like to be here for the whole session, but understand this might not, given the many demands on your schedule, that might not be possible. So we'll excuse you if you need to leave us at some point, but we really thank you very much for taking the time to be here with us today. That said, actually, before we move to the other panelists, we want to quickly hear from the people that are with us in the room, here in the Zoom room, and give you a chance to also have a quick say. We'll have two quick polls today. And so starting with one now, we want you to reflect very briefly on what do you think are the biggest barriers, or is the biggest barrier that young female entrepreneurs face in Asia Pacific. So if you could give us a quick vote. I'll see that votes are coming in. We realize, of course, that all of these are very serious issues, that we're not in any way, shape, or form implying that some of these are not important. All of them are, that's why they're on the list, but we just want to get a bit of a sense of what you think, or maybe you have experienced as the main ones. In the meantime, I also wanted to say that we will have various rounds of interventions, or maybe more sharing, because we're hoping that it will be more of a discussion between our different panelists today. And then towards the end, we'll also have time for some question and answers. So if someone says something along the way that really triggers you, please put your questions in the chat, and then we'll try to make sure to address them at some point. And maybe even you will ask something that will steer our panelists from their chosen path, and they might even already address it as we speak. Maybe give you, I think we have almost everyone voted, so if we can give maybe 5 more seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'll end the poll here. So hope you can see the results. Social cultural norms, interesting enough, is come on top. Obviously not, I think so. I think we have a big, a lot of people in the room looking at the bigger picture. So that's interesting to know. And I think, but at the same time, I think also looking at the poll, there seems to be quite a diversity beyond those. So I think we all recognize that all of these issues are things that we should really address. That I think is good enough for me for now. We have today, as Christophe already mentioned, 4 very exciting panelists. So we want to make sure that we have various rounds of them reflecting. And we want to say, as it is Women Entrepreneurship Day, we want to start, there were, I think, about 70 people in the survey, Sarah. We want to start with our 2 inspiring and active young female entrepreneurs, Esmeralda Lotam and Very Abi. And to sort of set the tone, also maybe you think reflecting a little bit of the barriers that were mentioned earlier, we want you to reflect a bit both on your journey as a young female entrepreneur, but also specifically some of the barriers that you have faced. And as we're sort of maybe, given that I think Esmeralda, you have been awake for a lot longer than the right have. So maybe Esmeralda, if you wanted to go first, that would be really great. So Esmeralda, please take the floor. But I should actually also say, so Esmeralda is the founder of 8 Sports as well as 8 Goals. From Samoa, but I think as you already said, you're joining us from Brisbane today, and I think very much at home across the Pacific. So we very much hear, and I think those of you who know Esmeralda know how inspiring your journey has been, so really looking forward to hear from you. Please go ahead, Esmeralda.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Mate. Thank you, Youth CoLab. Thank you to City Foundation and UNDP for having me here on the panel today. Yes, like Mate said, I am the founder of 8 Sports, and that started off in Samoa. I'm currently calling from Brisbane, Australia, and I wouldn't say I've got a base as such. I kind of travel in and out of the Pacific, Samoa, Fiji, New Zealand, Australia are a lot of the places that I've lived and worked in over the past few years. Some of the challenges that 8 Sports is we make compression wear. So we actually look at recovery in sports, but we use that as a vehicle to drive positive changes in mental health. And 8 Goals was a small business we established this year, looking at personal and professional development for people of all ages and in all stages of life. I think from barriers that I've found with starting my business, 8 Sports, initially in 2018, it was really interesting, that poll that you brought up earlier, Mate, but I think for me, one of my biggest barriers was finance. Firstly, having these great ideas, but not knowing where the money should go to, or how to access certain grants or sponsorships, but also that financial literacy with how it works with, I had to ship in a lot of things from overseas. So thinking of things like duty for shipping is something that I never thought of until that came up. So it's all these little things that as a new business owner, you're not really aware of until you have to face it, or unless someone else tells you about it. So it was a very new journey for me. And I think as a social entrepreneur as well, I've found that in order to keep the dream alive, or to keep the need for pushing for better, different revenue, different streams of revenue is very important to keep that social enterprise alive. I know we put so much effort in trying to keep our businesses alive, but I think thinking diversely and using your set of skills and knowing that knowledge is transferable. So starting the different businesses for me was a way to share in different ways, but also not to rely on one source of income, but allow other sources of income to come through. So that's kind of what I've learned as I've gone along. A second major barrier for me was going into kind of like a male-dominated society, whereas sports, the reason why I started 8 Sports was to put a platform out there for young girls specifically, because we didn't have a lot of sportswear that was specific to our body types, our body shapes, and also the climate, to be climate conducive to Samoa and to the Pacific. So I wanted to use material that would support recovery and support rest, but also support us as we're on the field or on the court, and as we're exercising. So it was a very new idea, and because it was going into a niche market, a very new niche market, it hadn't been created before. So I had to kind of create the paths for myself. And I you know, if you're kind of driving on a dark road and you're following a car in front of you with the headlights on, it's easier to see. But if you're kind of driving in your own lane and no one's been in that path before, it was very new. And so I kind of had to develop new ways of trying to make this product marketable to people who would think, otherwise, or think that wouldn't be, it hasn't been on the market before, so why would we need it now, kind of thing. So I've learned a lot in having the 8 Sports over the past 3 years, and I can continue to learn. I think those are 2 of my major barriers. There.
Thank you, Esmeralda. And I think when we talked earlier, you even said that initially, even though you created the 8 Sports specifically for women, initially many of your clients were men, right?
Yes, that's right. And that's why I had to change tact as well. So a lot of my marketing were towards ladies. And then I found about probably 90% of my clientele were actually males. And so I had to learn as I went as well, and change the way that I marketed, because I had young boys saying, oh, is this just for girls? Because I don't want to wear it if it's just for girls, kind of thing. So yeah, it was an interesting learning curve, but I found that it's the health and well-being sector is something everyone wants to get into. Everyone wants to be well, right? And so it's kind of making it more palatable for everyone, not just specifically for women. But it's, I guess my change of tact of supporting women and wherever they are, that hasn't changed. It's just, it's come about in a different way.
Thank you, Esmeralda, and we'll, as I said, we'll hear from you again soon. Moving to Pakistan, Larai is the founder of Mashal. She's also a social worker, so I think she has that perspective, I think, that many social entrepreneurs have, which is really balancing entrepreneurship with this desire for social change. And as you will soon hear, her journey has been, I think, both incredibly inspiring, but also definitely very challenging. So Laura, I'd like to give you the floor, and please tell us a bit more about your journey, your barriers.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. This is Lara from Lahore, Pakistan. Mashal is actually meant for making a society healthier and lively, and I've been working for 6+ years on specifically family planning, sexual and reproductive health rights. So I want to just tell you a bit about our culture and the topic that I used to focus. So usually when you have started a business, there is a stigma, or maybe there is something that you have deal with it first, and then you have to go towards its marketing and thinking about the funds. And Here is the point where it makes it a bit more difficult. So, working, first of all, realizing that this is the first application of Pakistan that consists of family planning methods, awareness, its services, its clinics, its geotags, and then the products, making it a unique tech innovative solution for the young people to reach. Knowing that 77% of the young people in the country had mobile phones, out of which 50 plus percentage of the people had access to internet. Yet there is a gap in our curriculum, in our parenting, and not a lot of people know about how they can plan the family, what is the healthy gap, and how they should actually go beyond the financial, mental, and every sort of planning when they are about to get married and when they get married. So one of the challenges that I had was, of course, stigma. It's not easy to talk about this topic in our country, especially. People feel shy; they are not comfortable to talk about it, and it was a hassle to, maybe dragging them out of their bubble, popping the bubble. It always creates a discomfort. And the second challenge that I did face was, of course, the utilization and how to, pitch the fundings. One of the reasons, the challenge that is because of the gender, is because whenever there's an interview or there's a grant, especially when it comes to the national level, the priority will always be given to men. And the reason is because people say that, the woman would get married and she would be busy, she won't be available because then she has to do her home chores and, be busy in the kids. So when there's a married lady or she's young, if you're giving her, maybe it won't amplify much. And this was something very, very challenging, I believe, because I had to, put in the place, listening everything, that how you're going to manage the kids in future, if you're going to travel, if you're going to have a business, how you're going to have time. I don't know how come these questions pop in everybody's head. So it wasn't easy. The initial reaction of the mobile application in terms of users was amazing, because I've seen people coming out to me telling how this information is not available anywhere, because on the Google it is scattered. If you go to the telehealth services, people didn't know what are the phone numbers. And when they wanted to go to the hospital, it's a stigma in Pakistan to go to gynae centers before marriage and just after marriage, because people think that why you're talking about the protection, about the family planning, because all you have to do is to have a kid in the first year, and that's the biggest achievement here. So tackling all this stigma and then bringing out a solution not to follow the mainstream trends that are being going in the country was way more difficult than I anticipated. But nonetheless, there were so many factors that were the driving force, the messages, the impact that came. And just it was just a start from one city, but it was huge. Although I do believe that in the tech sector and in the sector of funding, people still prefer men. They think that they would amplify it, they think that they would take it longer, and they would might be doing better. And they have better connections with men as well. Being a woman, you are limited to so many cultural settings as well. So these are the barriers that I've been facing. And if I say that there was a man instead of me, the journey would have been a bit easier, and I have seen more hurdles. But nonetheless, these hurdles are my challenge, and my challenges are always my passion to overcome it. And I didn't stop. I just followed the one message that said that this can change my life. And since that day till now, been 2+ years since I started the mobile application, I'm into the path of, growing it and making it better day by day.
Thank you, Laura. I think, yeah, your journey, I think, is incredibly inspirational. You shortly also said something about the particular challenges of being in a tech world. I think that's definitely a very male-dominated field. Can you maybe very shortly explain specific barriers that you found in that?
Yes. Whenever we come to the tech development, it is usually said that this field is of men, and usually women would be in the social sciences. And of course, because I also started as a social worker, I didn't start as a somebody who is having lead in the technology. So it definitely was a factor. But I would again on this day would like to say thanks, and who plays a very huge role in my life and in my setup is my husband, who is an engineer, and he has supported me throughout my journey, and he has told me how I can deal with the things, because being a layman at times, I didn't feel like maybe it's because the society was telling that women couldn't be in the tech, but he has given me the strength to, and I've learned a lot in tech, and then it gave me the confidence to continue it no matter what the field is. So it definitely was challenging, again, because it's men dominated, but it's all about passion, it's all about moving forward no matter how many tries it takes. So I've been on to that path.
Thank you, Laura. I think you managed the old saying of behind every man is a strong woman. I'm happy to see you flip the switch on that. I think you also already contextualized the issues a bit further, which I think gives us a great segue to hear from our two other panelists, Sagar Tandon and Ko Miawi. We want to, both of you, I think, work in the broader ecosystem that around women entrepreneurship. And so we want to hear a little bit about to what extent the barriers that both Esmeralda and Laura have highlighted, how much do these echo, I think, across the region? How much do you recognize? And are there certain interconnections that you see between these barriers? So maybe Ko, if we can start with you. Ko, as I said, is the gender team leader here at UNDP Asia-Pacific. So Ko, if you maybe could reflect a bit to what extent you recognize what has been said so far.
Thank you, Mate. And I think, it's just been really inspiring to hear from two women who have been trailblazing and not only being a female entrepreneurship present a specific set of challenges for being female entrepreneurs, but they have both ventured into a very traditionally female domain as a business sector or the enterprise topic. And I think it's really impressive that these women are popping up, because having ecosystem is very important. And we just saw in the pop quiz that, people feel that social norms and so on are big barriers for women entrepreneurs. And Esmeralda said, not seeing anyone in front of you to follow is a challenge. And of course, that reminded me of the famous speech by Kamala. She said, I'm the first, but I'm not the last. Now, girls here can follow. They have a model, they have a role model. And I think, what Larai and Esmeralda are doing also will have a great influence on the way that girls see themselves as and their capability as they grow up. So their sheer presence also already influenced the ecosystem. But of course, ecosystems are not just made up of female entrepreneurs, that we have other things in it, and particularly, partners in businesses or those who you need to interact with businesses. Or while we probably have very few policies and laws that discriminate women in their face in participating in economic activities, they still exist. But I would say, they've been reduced in numbers. We still have obstacles in the way that business are conducted. 15-20 years ago, I heard a lot from women entrepreneurs that a lot of business conversations and decisions are taken during drinking sessions in evenings, where many women are not able to join for various reasons. One, perhaps it was just not considered a done thing for women, or two, that they have other responsibilities at home, so they couldn't be joining evening drinking conversations. Or traveling for businesses overnight was not seen as a thing for women to do it alone. So they had to always get somebody to travel with them, and that's extra barrier that women entrepreneurs face. And these are conversations that I heard 15-20 years ago, and I continue to hear similar stories. So I kind of feel that there's much more need to be done to change the ecosystem. And that also suggests that the broader gender equality conversation need to happen simultaneously, because this ecosystem is not only impacting women entrepreneurs and their environment, but it has an implication on the rest of gender equality issues. So if we can advance gender equality broadly, which will inevitably need to transform social norms and perceptions and discriminatory practices, then it will expand the space in which women entrepreneurs can more equally and fully engage and pursue their business objectives. So I think, you know, we need to start thinking of all of that too.
Thank you, Ko. I think, yes, it's always hard to hear that certain challenges and barriers were already seen many years ago, many decades ago. So I think that's a harsh reality, but at the same time, of course, very important to point out. I think one of the other things that we've heard for a long time is that to be able to change or to address women empowerment and women leadership, one of the things that we do need is also to include men. So I'm using that segue to move to our last speaker, although we will, as I said, we'll go back to both Larep and Esmeralda in another round soon. So asking Sagar Tanun. Sagar is a principal at both Moonshots Values and the Indonesian Women Empowerment Fund based in Indonesia. Sagar is, I think, aside from having a very extensive and long experience specifically in investing in entrepreneurship and in startups, I think also comes with a very particular viewpoint of being a male working on women empowerment and promoting women entrepreneurship. So Sagar, from that point of view, I'd like to ask you to also reflect a little bit on how much you recognize the barriers that we've heard so far, and how you contextualize those in the broader issue of women entrepreneurship.
Yep, thank you. To be a little bit politically incorrect, I'll start with, I started my journey as a male feminist. When I was in college, I was actually trying to figure it out, why the world is like that, where one gender is always below the other gender. And today, hearing some of the things what Esmeralda and Larep are talking about is something that I have been continuously observing in my whole career, when from my activism, how I slowly start moving to social entrepreneurship, later start working from the investing side, that I have spent a lot of doing gender lens investing, is something very interesting to me, honestly speaking. We know that 50% of the beneficiaries, or 50% of the customers in the world, 51% of the people on the planet are female. And how many entrepreneurs actually are building solutions for this? It's also to question it, because when you don't have female founders, how are they going to have a lens to serving those female customers? Which is very important that Esmeralda and Larep are trying to do. Going into an industry which is probably being more patriarchal, more male dominated, or nobody wants to talk about, how are you going to go and build solution for menstruation tech or something like sports for female? And that's where you start needing those female founders more and more. And I start looking at some patterns around. I just told you that 50% of the customer base is female. But interestingly, 80% of the purchasing decisions are made by female. So it's not an impact or a social justice argument from now. Anybody who says that, I think, is, honestly speaking, is incorrect. The argument is actually more about, it's not about charity. It's about giving opportunity and power and access to more female founders who can go and translate their vision for those 50% of the people who have not been served well, honestly speaking. And also it brings a very different lens to it. There is another thing that I'll bring it, which I feel it's a myth that exists in the market, specifically as a gender lens investor, investing into female entrepreneurs with Indonesia Women Empowerment Fund, is, oh, there are not enough female entrepreneurs. But if you actually start looking at the stats, specifically, I'll just show the stat from US, around 38% of the entrepreneurs are female. How many got funding? Less than 3%. So okay, a lot of people as female entrepreneurs, you guys keep hearing that, oh, there are not enough good pipelines, so we won't invest. I think it also goes back to not access to finance, but systematic barriers which exist among who is allocating the capital, who is controlling the capital, and who is allocating that capital. And that is also very much skewed, which I'll touch base towards the end, is around the gender diversity of the investors and the ecosystem is also missing. So yeah, so we need more female entrepreneurs like Esmeralda, Larep, and more of them who actually create new niches. Actually, I love that sports for female is not a niche, honestly speaking. It's a 50% market who wants to be healthy and well. So can we serve them also? So I think it's not just a niche serving female entrepreneurs, it's not a niche that's serving female beneficiaries. It's actually a big market. Honestly speaking, as investors, as people in social work and development sector, we feel that whole gender lens is an impact issue. I just want to rephrase it and say it's not just an impact issue, it's an economic argument, it's a business argument, that more and more gender diversity will lead to probably a better world for us. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I was just reflecting about my whole position on it.
My answer is not important in this sense, Sagar. I think what you had to say was much more relevant. So I think yeah, absolutely very correct observation. And indeed that at the end of the day, it's not just about charity, but it's about opportunity and opportunity both, I think, for the entrepreneurships, but also opportunities for our community at large, what these entrepreneurs will bring to our societies. That we actually want to, I want to also highlight, maybe let our, because we're going to go into another poll now. So our panelists, this gives you a quick chance to look at the chat. There's already some questions coming in, so please have a look and then sort of see if you can weave some of these issues that questions have been raised into your next rounds. Because we want to do another poll. Specifically now, we've sort of heard a little bit already about the barriers. So now we want to ask you, what should be prioritized to support young female entrepreneurs? Here again, we understand that all of these are important. So it's not, you won't be dismissing anything by choosing one over the other, but it's just to get a sense of amongst us, what you think are really sort of what should have been done yesterday, and then what should we be doing today and tomorrow. Yeah, I think it would be really great to hear from you all, because we'll the next round of responses, we'll be hearing from our different panelists about what support and help they have gotten along the way. So it'd be great to hear a bit quickly from you. I think we're about halfway to our of our participants now. Please, of course, don't overthink it. We won't come back to you and sort of hold you account to this. This is just to get initial sense. But yeah, please take a moment to vote as well. And this, because that will also, for all of you, give our panelists a chance to read some of the questions and comments that have come up in the chat so far. Okay, I think there's still a few coming in, so maybe if we can take another 10 seconds. I've got my lovely assistant here on my side that is unfortunately for you not in the screen, who will help me count down. So maybe 5, 4, 3, almost. Yeah, 3, 2, 1. Okay, people, I hope you have a chance to have your say. We'll end the poll now. And here to share the results. This time around, mentorship is come on top, so that's, I think, great to hear, because I think that's something that many of us in the room are focusing on, but also very closely followed by introduction to to investors, as well as advice with financial management. But I think here again, as with the previous poll, you also see that I think at the end of the day, all the options have been at least prioritized by some of us, which I think gives an indication of how many, how diverse the support needs to be. And I think also something that has come up in our conversation, that of course some of the support will need to come in at different stages of people's careers. So this will take us back to Esmeralda and Narek. Having seen some of the support suggestions that were prioritized by our audience, I'd like to ask you to reflect a little bit on what kind of support you've gotten along the way, and what was particularly useful for you. And where possible, of course, we'd like to ask you to be very concrete. I think both for maybe the young entrepreneurs in the room that would like to follow your path and sort of know what support to look for, but also for those of us in the room that work on supporting women entrepreneurs and young women entrepreneurs to know sort of which things actually worked. As Esmeralda went first the last time around, I think maybe Laurette, if you want to tackle this question first, and then we'll move to Esmeralda afterwards. So Laurette, yeah, please share your thoughts.
Okay, in terms of support, I guess first of all that I always talk everywhere about is what's the inspiration, because that was the actually support that pushed me, to do this thing and implement this idea. So I also touched based on the first question as well, but I just want to go through it again. So one fine day I received a call from my friend and she asked me to, connect her to a doctor because she didn't want to conceive because her husband was like abroad and he used to come after every few months and they were not financially sound. So I said, is everything okay? And she said that I couldn't, go to the hospital because it's a stigma. So I'm asking you. Then I said that why? How come you don't know anything? It's been 3 years of your marriage and you're just asking the questions about family planning. She said, if I go to the hospital beforehand, it would be, very stigmatized. And if I would have called, I had no idea if the number was authentic or the teleservices has, been confidential enough that I can, put my trust on. I said, why you didn't Google? Because these were the questions that were coming to my mind, to which he said, that the information online is scattered, it's not authentic enough. How would I see that what's right, what's wrong? So with all these queries that came in and, the answer that I got, what actually was the support to push me back and think about something which is missing. There was a single platform that was missing for all of these things. And that's where I thought a simple mobile application can solve the case. But that's where the question lied, that how I'm going to make it. Initially, it was really, really tough because I didn't know how to get started. So I just started with my social work activities. I, had my own expertise I used with my core members of the organization. But of course, then we had to scale it up, go to every young person. And that's when I thought about the international platforms and the platforms I was part of. So I started off with the Women Deliver. I was a young leader, and that's where conferences, networking, and fellowships are important. I was a Women Deliver young leader, and because I was already working on family planning, and they had a small grant idea going on, and I just thought, okay, I'll just apply, and I had no, even assumption of I could win that. And when I won it, they actually sort of gifted, or it was in the grant, a laptop. Honestly, I couldn't afford that laptop before that. And to me, maybe somebody cannot even realize that how big that support was. I had a laptop which couldn't even work for so many hours before without the power, electric power. And it made my work double time slower. So at that time, that grant and that laptop was a big deal for me. And that was actually the life-changing process then when I worked more on it. I worked on my idea. I started from one city, and from one city to whole Pakistan, 2,500 plus clinics, almost 10 telehealth services, almost like bilingual data in English and in Urdu. But then I thought I need more. Why would somebody want to keep that application? But again, I wanted a support. Then because I was working on family planning and some tech ideas, I got selected by Bill and Melinda Gates Institute as a young leader. I applied for the Ingenuity Fund and I got that as well. So I've been very lucky in terms of, being connected to the platform. Of course, it's an ongoing thing that you need in future as well. But from that, I scaled it up to a lot of provinces and added more services. As I said, I added the audio version for the people who cannot read or write, or who are visually impaired. So that is something that actually created a chain. I went to the conferences like Unleash in Denmark, and I would see so many solutions coming from across the globe. They selected 1,000 sort of ideas that were innovative. And then, I got connected to UNFPA from Bill and Melinda Gates Institute. They called me here, and then here they called me that, the government sector, the organization that worked with the government sector wants their clinics to be added in your application. Now that was a big deal. And I just realized that how, the chain reaction works. You started off with a very small step of social work, and then you go to the conference and you pitch your idea, and then second and third. And from that, a person told me about Youth Collab, and they invited me there. And when I went there, I got to know what Youth Collab is, and I applied because I'm a person that if you are going to tell me an opportunity, I'm definitely going to go after it like anything. I'm not going to wait for it. That's because I know how many hurdles we already have. So, I always push myself beyond my comfort zone, always. And I applied there. Then Yaki, she told me a lot of opportunities regarding that, and I won that recent UNDP challenge as well, which was the Impact Challenge. I was among the runner-ups. But again, these chain have been helping me so much into implementing my idea that needed cost help, that needed finances, that needed a team, that needed to scale up. I needed to market that across the country. And this is a support that, of course, would be needed in the future as well. But at least I started off with the path. So I just want to say thanks to Youth Collab, UNDP, and such organizations, and to the people who think that conferences do nothing. It's much more than that. Some provides you networks, some provides you with grants, some provides you with the technical skills. I guess Women Deliver provided me with the technical skills. They taught me what is proposal writing. They taught me, how to pitch the idea. Because in our curriculum, honestly, I wouldn't say that there's something which I have learned which was practical. I had to learn like literally everything after, the studies. So then I also started teaching, just to teach my students what I missed in my past. And I thought that it should be coming from the curriculum, from the teachers as well, because teachers should be mentors as well. So this chain, I hope it goes way beyond this as well, because in every step, for example, I wanted to now put the products. Now products have cost. I have to buy in bulk. That there is big companies, if they want to give you your product, they'll give you in like wholesale in bulk. That needed cost. The marketing needed cost. The delivery, the sending it makes cost. The designing, coding, everything. So there are so many components which needed cost. At that time, that's why I think that it's really important that if you're even doing social work or social change, make your entrepreneurship journey or your model revenue generating. Because now if I generate the revenue from the products, it might be a bit easy for me to even continue even if I don't have funding. So what I did for that challenge, I made products online so that I can keep it continue even if I do not have funding at all. And then in my core members, as I said, that I have the tech side person, the communication side person, and the project pitching person. So this has helped me at least to continue even if we lack funds, and it would go on because application doesn't cost anything once it's made. So this is how the support I've been receiving, and now the government knows that there's an application. It's been recognized Pakistan wide, and I've been working with as a technical advisor with them as well. So now the things are on path, but yes, it did take a lot of struggle because I've heard those things that my application is vulgar because it talks about family planning, which is very much anti-moral and anti-religious, and it should not be, spread. So that was something I have to deal with very critically and very culturally sensitive manner. And at times it looks and it feels really bad. Somebody saying that it's vulgar and something like this just because it's family planning, and I'm not talking about the mainstream roles for women. But then, of course, I have to go with that as well.
Thank you, Lara. I think if you'll check out the comments, you'll see a lot of amazing story responses. So I think your journey is I think definitely very, very inspiring, but I think you also highlighted very concrete forms of support that you have received along the way that have helped you further. So I think that kind of feedback is really crucial for us as we all try to emulate and create even more LARIPes around the region as we go along. Esmeralda, for you as well, I think you have had an equally inspiring journey. Could you share with us a little bit about what specific support has been along the way that has really made a difference for you?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a bit of both of what Saga and Lara were talking about before as well. I think Saga mentioned opportunities. And for me, it was just really taking the opportunities because like any young girl at the time, I thought, okay, where is this idea going to go? It's just an idea. But I got an email from Youth Collab one day, and that's literally how this whole journey started. And from applying to be into the Youth CoLab, so for those of you who are unaware of what Youth CoLab really does, is we went in to pitch an idea, our business idea, in front of a panel, and this was in the regional, this was in the local, so I pitched in Samoa, and I didn't make the top 3, so it was the top 3 who won, and they got, you know, certain prizes and things like that. I actually came 4th, so within the top 5, and I really felt down that I didn't make, you know, that I didn't really achieve my goal at that time. But in all honesty, I think it was probably one of the best things that happened to me, because I worked so hard to be able to make the next one. And I got the opportunity through Youth CoLab to go represent Samoa in China with one of my other colleagues. And from there, I had learnt to, you know, to better my pitch. First time I had done a pitch ever. And so, you know, I didn't really know what I was doing. But because of the time difference as well, traveling from Samoa to China, I think it was 3 flights I had to catch to get to Beijing. And so my body clock was really off. I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd use that time to practice. So from 3 o'clock into the morning, right up to 8 o'clock at breakfast, I would be in my room practicing over and over and over again. So by the time it came to lunchtime, I'd go back to my room, have a quick nap, and then wake up for the afternoon sessions. But that actually got me on stage, and I was able to win one of the prizes there. I think it was most innovative, one of the most innovative awards, and I was the only Pacific person on that stage, with everyone else representing, you know, the Philippines, China, you know, other massive nations, and we're just, you know, a tiny fish kind of in that sea. So that was something that I kind of learnt from that first kind of that first bump in the road, I guess. From there, we were able to meet with the UNDP leaders, and we went into this roundtable room with all of us, and they gave us an opportunity for us to speak and say how we found the opportunity. And me and my colleague from Samoa kind of spoke about the fact that we were able to pitch in the local, and then we went right from local into the regional, so Asian Pacific, but we didn't get a pitching experience within the Pacific itself. So that was a huge step for us, you know, from primary school right to university without, you know, the middle steps kind of thing. And so from that, we got another opportunity to go to the Solomon Islands to really bridge that gap in between the Pacific. And I got to advocate there for social entrepreneurship, and to talk to the youth as well about the importance of leading and the importance of being your own, you know, to voice what other kind of youth need to hear as well. And from there, honestly, the opportunities have not stopped coming. I've been able to attend conferences in Sydney and Brisbane, you know, talk to athletes in Fiji and in Samoa, and sponsor some athletes as well, going into Pacific Games, weightlifters, you know, in all different types of sports. But all of those opportunities would not have been possible if I didn't take that first step in thinking, you know, and just sending off that email. I'm not sure of what the outcome would have been, but if you would have told me 3 years ago that I'd be talking on international panels like this in person and online, I'd be like, no, not me. Not at all. But I think it's really just taking up those opportunities that you never know, and just knowing, you know, backing yourself as well, like Larab was saying, just to get that support, and independent of where it's from, if it's from your own family. That poll that you put up, Mate, just really highlighted that mentorship is so key in whatever we do in life, whether it's in business or whether it's personal. To have coaches and mentors on the sideline and people supporting you, and really staying around those like-minded people is so important, because it's so easy to listen to or to go off into another tangent and to be kind of drowned out. But if you really listen to the people who support you and want the best out of you, you're going to get the best out of your business, and you're going to be able to put that into other people's lives as well. And I think that's really important. And not only belief in where you want to go and in having that hope, but also having the belief in yourself, because you're the one that is going to be running all of this, and you're the one that can can envision things, but you're also the one that can change things. You can't rely on other people to change things for you. And so when we look at social cultural norms, which was the first poll, and wanting to change that, it's really looking at what you can do for your own society and your own community. And then that would be reflected or reciprocated from society as well. And then, we'll be able to change the world little bit by little. But we can't keep looking at other people and thinking, wanting handouts, I guess. We have to kind of work for ourselves and see how that, and let the work speak for itself, really. Yeah.
Thank you, Esmeralda. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone that we're all very happy that you sent that initial email and that you're there with us today. And also I think want to do a disclaimer. As Youth Collab, we didn't instruct them to speak about Youth Collab. So we're just really appreciative of the kind words. But I think maybe more importantly, I think what comes through very clearly from both Larry and from Esmeralda is that there's many ways that support is really useful, and many different kinds of support that is necessary along the way. But getting support still also requires a lot of hard work. So I think even to make full use of the opportunities and so on, you too have gotten, you've put in a lot of work. So I think there, as Sagar already said earlier, it's not about charity, it's about creating opportunities. So then we're going to our final round. So I think there's already a lot of questions going through the chats, and I think I even saw some people connecting up already, so that's really great. So before moving to that, we wanted to finally sort of zoom out a little bit. In the video, I think there was already mention of the ripple effect that investing, supporting, and empowering young female entrepreneurs has. Not just for them or their families, but for their societies and their communities and their societies at large. So we want to zoom out, sort of take a bit of a look at that bigger picture. And I realize that, of course, that's a hard thing to reflect, sort of how have you and your business impacted beyond what you yourself intended to do. But I'm still going to try to ask you to reflect on it a little bit. Esmeralda, maybe as we're still with you and you're still on my screen, so maybe first for you, how do you think your own journey and the progress of 8 sports and 8 goals has affected sort of your community and your society around you?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this question. I never really pondered on it because it's kind of just, I kind of take it, people ask to speak on panels and I'll take it day at a time. But thinking about it now, I mean, a couple months ago, I was on another gender panel, excuse me, and this was one that was run in Africa. And we talked about female genital mutilation. We talked about child marriage. We talked about a whole lot of gender-based violence, and really trying to stamp out, I guess, a lot of things against human rights, so to speak. So, that's just one small example, and working with a whole lot of other organizations around the world with standing up for things that I personally believe in. So, whether it's human rights or whether it's female empowerment and equality, it's really, those are, I guess, the things that have had the ripple effects. And just this week, I think, or last week, I had another workshop here in Australia talking about customs and the way that girls, the roles that girls play in Samoan customs or in Pacific world. And so I guess those are the little things that I never anticipated 8 Sports would really drive, because again, you know, we're compression wear, but it's really had such a tremendous effect on so many young lives around me. And I only know that because they, you know, I get the feedback from either their mothers or, you know, feedback from themselves directly. And even having fathers message me and say, you know, I can see that this has really affected my son in ways, you know, because we also try and break down barriers of talking about mental health and depression and anxiety and things like that, and making it in a comfortable setting, because those are the social cultural barriers that currently hinder us from being our true selves, or hinder us from being able to excel in areas that we would otherwise. So I think there's a lot of unanticipated things that I never knew 8 Sports would ever be capable of. But it really excites me for the future, knowing that, you know, through COVID, that's how 8 Goals was born, because people would be calling me for advice on either personal things, like relationships or, you know, friendships, or professional things of how to start a business, or, you know, what should I do now? I don't have a lot of clients where I used to have before. And so I'd offer advice thinking, you know, it's a couple minutes of my day and it's not too much for me, but it could change the whole world for someone else. It could change the whole dynamics of how they think about their business. And then that could help their family and the community that they're in. So in a way, that COVID has been a blessing on 8 Sports, because I never, you know, the business or my life wouldn't have slowed down to the pace that it is now, but it's just showed me a different tangent of where we can go in future. And it's really excited me. And also just wanting to thank, because, you know, the Asian-Pacific banner is such a wide scope. We've got massive countries like China and India in the Asian-Pacific. But to have, you know, within 24 hours, over 20 people, you know, or a lot of people dialing in from the Pacific, from Australia and New Zealand, is such a need. And you need to know that, you know, if you have an idea or if you have something, then just go for it, back yourself, or, you know, reach out, because there are so many people who are willing to help. And, you know, 8 Sports and 8 Goals, I'd say we're one of them, because we do want to see the Pacific thrive, and we do want to see Asian Pacific thrive. We can't do it alone. You know, if we want these social cultural norms to change, we have to work together with our businesses and really developing and trying to change the poverty in the Asian Pacific region as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Esmeralda. I think I'm going to do push. I had a chance we had a chance to talk to Esmeralda a while back. So we had I think a longer blog story on the Youth Collab website of your journey. So I highly recommend everybody to read that, just because I think a lot of the inspiration and insights you've shared today are further reflected there. Same for you, Laura, and I realized that in Mashal, obviously, I think that bigger impact is almost ingrained in the entire objective and vision of your enterprise. But still, has there been, I think, maybe broader sort of ripple effects or multipliers that maybe you didn't see coming as you went on your journey?
Yes, totally. Even the interventions that I've been doing, I didn't expect that I'll be doing those one day. I'll start with replying Kiran. She said that what motivates you and what is the investment that you have done so far, which is valuable. I just want to share one thing. That's my ideology. I believe that one should look into the problem and then create a tool. Just like Esmeralda saw that, you know, there's a gap of not having enough sports equipment or training for women, and then she, you know, came up with the idea. Instead of, you know, creating a tool and then solving a problem, because for me that doesn't create an impact. An impact idea is when you see the problem. So when I started off with this idea that, you know, I want to tell the women to have a family, I realized that actually I'm telling them to, you know, work for their professional skills, work for their dreams, travel as much as they can, because in our country usually we are told that you're just, you know, here in the world to just for the kids, for the marriage, for doing the home chores. And somewhere I was telling them to not to, you know, have not a family, but, you know, plan it. also fulfill your dreams, also do whatever you feel like doing it, what the skills you have. So I traveled almost 20 plus countries and representing my ideas and sharing in a lot of platforms of training as a trainer, as a panelist. And in all those countries, every time I got a question, like I also got in the chat, I was reading that how you're going there, how you're applying there. So then I came up with this idea. So I have this workshop with the name of Do Wonders. It's basically on entrepreneurship. Here I tell young men and women both how they can apply for ideas, how can they can develop the solutions, and how they can apply for the scholarships. Now this was something I was totally not, expecting that I would be doing, and I would be connecting with family planning and then this entrepreneurship. But I received so many queries over like past few years that how you're going to the places, how you're pitching the ideas, how you're working with the government. It's just a youth-led organization. How is it recognized, so forth. So I thought, why not create a platform and tell people there that how you can apply. And believe me, it takes so much of my energy. I give like usually it's just once a year, but it's like 4 to 5 hours long program in which I invite people. This time I did online as well, and I was so amazed to see so many people who could come because it was online, and people from every part joined in. So the ripple effect is not only in terms of its outcomes but also in terms of its inputs and outputs that I've been doing. Now the ripple effect of course also goes beyond the multiplier effects. For example, I would like to share that one day, it's like 3-4 years ago, I was giving a session in a church. That was a marginalized area, very low class, and people living near the poverty line. And the girls came to me, and they said that, can you talk to our parents, because they do not even allow us to have a cell phone. I was a bit taken aback because I didn't know that there's a place that even if you can afford of one phone, they would give it to the sons, but not to the daughters, because of lack of trust, because of thinking that why would they need it, because they don't want to go outside. It's not important for them to study. It's not important for them to internet. In fact, it can give them bad options, or I don't know what sort of thoughts they have. So I do believe that it's just one idea of family planning, but it sprouts to so many things of like women empowerment, planning the family, going to the professional side, building your ideas, and then also inspiring others. So I also believe in this strongly, that if you are at a place one day, it's your duty to help others, to mentor others in any capacity you can. For example, when I started this journey, I had no idea about international conferences and platforms. And when I got connected with Women Deliver and even with Youth Collab, and when the team starts sending you the opportunities, at that time when I didn't know that this happens, I used to think why they're doing it for me. I mean, why they're telling me the opportunities. This is amazing because it doesn't happen here. I haven't seen that at least. So for me, it was like I was telling to whole family that they tell the opportunities on the emails. Imagine, it was a big deal for me to even know the platforms of the names. It is a big deal, and that's where I started with the first ever international platform. So because that has been life changing for me, I try to be the same as well. And I have been not only conducting those workshops, I've been telling the people exactly where they need to go. It's not just doctor and an engineer that you can be in the country. There are so many fields and there are so many solutions that are waiting for you. And I always guide them about the SDGs and how they can be a part of it along with the businesses. So yes, this one idea has been sprouting into so many other sectors as well.
Thank you, Laura. I think, yeah, here too, your journey has been amazingly inspiring, and I think that the impact you've had is tremendous. And there also, again, for Esmeralda, we have a blog already. For Laura, there's one in the making, so keep an eye on the Youth Collab site for more on Laura's incredible journey. But I think there's, for me, two main things that come out of both your journeys. One is that the immense impact and difference individuals like you can make, and I think that I really wanted to say that explicitly, that how inspiring and how much impact you've had, I think, along the way, and still have. But also the enormous need there is still for more information, for mentorship, for support, for all of this. Tools that I think that we saw come through in the polls, because I think both of you have mentioned that you're constantly approached by people around you looking for support and advice. So I think that's as a broader ecosystem, that's something that we should obviously, I think, need to take note of and make sure that we really reach out as broadly as we can with the opportunities and support that we offer, which I think nicely gets us back to Sagar and Ko. And Sagar, I want to ask you to go first now. To reflect also a little bit on this topic of the multiplier effect that women, and particularly young women entrepreneurship has in their broader societies, but also a little bit maybe on what kind of support ecosystem partners should prioritize more to make sure that we can really amplify this multiplier effect.
Yep. So actually, I will start with what Lareb and Esmeralda were talking about. And when I was hearing about the argument of a good entrepreneur, I was saying the grit is there, the reflectiveness is there, the coachability is there, wanting to prove themselves was there. And the most important point, both are problem driven. So they are solving some critical problems existing in the society. So from that point of view, that we need these female entrepreneurs who are not just there to build startups, but actually to solve some problems. It's not just me to provide access to financial services, which I think a lot of people are talking about microfinance, banks, and have been doing it. Microfinance has been a huge movement, but I'll show from a different stark reality point of view that a lot of people think that female entrepreneurs cannot build scalable businesses. And in the end, they can actually do women SMEs and women MSMEs. And this has led to a space where a very small amount of capital only goes in, which Lareb also touched that, oh, tech companies cannot be built by females. I think so those kind of barriers that women can also build scalable companies is something that ecosystem needs to provide definite strong support to it. Apart from that, one specific piece I think both of them have touched upon and both of them are actively doing at their personal level is around role models and mentors. So that's a huge gap when you see only 3% of the female founders get any kind of a funding. So until and unless all the female founders right now in the ecosystem come forward and actually show that, oh, you can be an entrepreneur, as well as there's one more point that I'll bring in. I was thinking of ending my session, like towards the end of the session, but it's also, I think, gender, we have built a very female issue. In the end, gender is a male and female and societal issue. So how Esmeralda is trying not to just work with adolescent girls and females, but also those boys is the same thing when we talk about that we need to have more female entrepreneurs being role models and support. We need more male founders, male fund managers, male ecosystem builders to also support that. I think that's very important to me. I think role models, very important. The second piece is access to finance for building scalable companies is also very important. The third one, I definitely feel that which is missing in the ecosystem is, which in gender lens community also very few of us actually talk about is, so I'll just give you a very interesting stat. 40% of the wealth in the world is actually owned by women. Less than 1.3% of the total asset management community, the whole venture capital, private equity, investor circle is actually managed by women. So there is a huge difference of who is managing that capital and who is allocating that capital. If we want our female founders to thrive more, we also as an ecosystem, we need to find out a way to increase diversity at the asset management and the capital allocator level. It's an issue that you need to solve at every level. You can't just serve women beneficiaries if you don't have female founders. You can't just serve female founders if you don't have female fund managers and capital allocators. And also you can't serve any of this when both men and women don't come together, because it's in the end, it's a societal issue as an ecosystem builder.
Thank you, Sagar. Before moving to Ko, we're, as unfortunately also happens, I think always in these kinds of sessions, we're running a little bit out of time. I think Zoom hasn't given us an opportunity yet to to address that. So rather than going through questions one-on-one, I would like to ask all panelists to try to scroll through the questions in the comments, because there's a lot of them. Try to have a quick look, and then after, Ko, I'll give you the floor to answer the question first. But then after that, I would like to give a quick round where I'll ask the panelists each to shortly try to address as many as the questions that are in the chat as possible, and maybe try to sort of group some of them in one answer, if that's okay. So if Esmeralda and Sagar, if you can start scrolling, and then Ko, once I'll let you answer the questions last, so that you have a chance to do the scrolling as well. But still, going, I think, back first, Ko, I'd also like to ask you to answer also this question of the importance of the multiplier effect that young female entrepreneurs have on the wider society, and I think also specifically from you, what kind of actions we want to really have from ecosystem partners to, or from our society at large, to enable this kind of effect.
Thank you, Marta. And through UNDP's work, where we do support small enterprises, which we may sort of call them more kind of necessity enterprises coming out of necessity. But in those interventions that we see, for example, a woman in Nepal saying, having cash that I have earned myself and I can decide what to do with it, has already given her a lot of lift in terms of self-confidence. And I think that's the start that we have to plant in our communities and in our young women, that sense of autonomy, the sense of empowerment, and that will create cascading impact. We have also seen, again, in Nepal, women entrepreneurs, again, small scale enterprises, but they have been growing. And some of them have then established themselves as successful business women, and started to becoming more publicly known and gaining credibility, and they have become successfully local politicians, and that they run elections and they won. So that's a kind of cascading impact of women and empowerment, going beyond enterprises, but then having more political influence in their communities and societies and countries. So I think we can expect those changes now, and there are many solutions that we can look at to every different obstacles that women entrepreneurs face, and they can be looked at from a very much sort of a business perspective. So, for example, there's been a lot of conversations around how women do not have control over the cash flow. So women may be growing something, creating some small products, but they're themselves not allowed to go and sell them in the market. So they will have somebody, middlemen, usually men, who will then take that role, and therefore women will not be receiving the profit as much as they should be. The solution was, okay, so we need to train men and then raise their awareness that they shouldn't be doing this. No, somebody said, well, why don't we just develop a digital device where cash doesn't need to change hands? The money will not be in cash, but it's just, organized through digital means. So that nobody's required to be in the middle. Oh, that's great, right? I mean, okay, we still need to talk about connectivity issues and so on, but the solutions are not necessarily, about changing the entire social norms, but it much more focusing on a particular business challenge. But again, this solution can now be used for many other ways to close many inequality issues, like people with mobility issues. Doesn't have to be women, but they can be benefiting from this. So solutions that can support women entrepreneurs more equal and participation and growth can be beneficial for the rest of the society. And I think we know so therefore it's not only about women, right? It's about the whole society. Now, what we can do also as UNDP, we also talk about a bigger sort of policy level conversations in UNDP. And one thing that we've noticed through the COVID responses is that there's a lot more concerted effort by governments to accelerate digitalization. And this will be useful for those people, particularly women who have been left behind in very remote areas. For example, if the company get digitalized because the need is felt as a result of the COVID crisis, this should be leveraged to benefit those women who have been most marginalized. And of course, we still need to fine-tune the interventions to make sure that that this effort will not be undermined by a continuing sort of gender bias. But if we can get this right, it's a great opportunity for many more young women to be participating in economy. So I think we should be influencing the policy level digitalization strategy as UNDP to then make sure that the policies are inclusive and making sure that people who may be currently excluded will be given priority. So I think there's an opportunity there that we can influence the ecosystem. And then we're also working with a lot of financing means, like investment mechanisms and new financing mechanisms for SDGs. And through those means, we can, for example, make sure to prioritize enterprises that are not only women-led, but maybe led by men, but promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. And they will have cascading impact on the next waves of young women. So we can, if we can influence these financing means from, to make sure they're inclusive and equitable, then that's the kind of ecosystem change that we should be looking at in order to then enable women entrepreneurs to be having equal opportunities as well.
Thank you, Ko. I think what I really like about you that you highlighted a lot of big challenges and big needs, but I think you've done it in a way that made me excited about how we're going to make all these things. I think that your excitement and inspiration around this is very, very contagious. So we have very little time left, but I see, I think that some of our speakers have also been responding to some of the questions already in the comment chat. So I hope that I'm going to try to challenge you if you can want to give 1 minute to each one of you to give more sort of a final reflection or one particular question that you still want to answer. And then I hope in that way we will be able to respond as much as possible to the things raised. So maybe Esmeralda, I saw you typing away just now, so maybe you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. I'll answer Kieran's question. I hope I said that right. What advice would you give to a smart, driven young woman who are students about to enter the real world, and what advice would you ignore? It will be hard. It's not easy, but never give up. Perfection doesn't exist, but if you aim for perfection, you'll reach excellence. Always aim to be better and excel above the rest. Ignore the that won't work, or you can never do that. Go against the grain and back yourself, and all the best.
Thank you, Esmeralda. I think we made it very clear why people come to you for advice. Lorette, for you as well, I also saw that I think you've been also commenting a little bit, but did you want to also give your final shout out?
Sure. I just replied to Kiran the last conversation I had, and then I see that some people have asked me to connect for the hackathons, and I've also replied them the email. So I do not see like more questions. Some people have asked me again and some comments, so I don't see more questions. So
Want to have one last thing you sort of maybe still wanted to share, some last thought you wanted to leave us with?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Again, I would say that I believe that in this world, you're not here just to sleep, eat, and have fun, but also to make a change. It's really important that you leave something once you're gone that people would talk about, that this is something they have done, for the society, even if it's just the smallest part. So play your part, and create solutions. Don't think about the hurdles, be passionate. But yes, one thing, and that's the quotation I've created myself. So opportunities are like a buffet. So you go, you take your plate, take the opportunities, and then enjoy the meal. But if you think that you're having the plate on the table and you just see other people's plate, nobody is going to give you from their plate. So it's you who have to come out of that comfort zone, go to the buffet, and then enjoy the opportunities, create the solution, make some amazing meals, and then enjoy. Because I see a lot of also those people who have talents but they do not come out of their comfort zones and that's where issues start creating. So leave your comfort zone and just be yourself and go for that path which is like your choice and you have that skill. That's it.
Thank you, Laura. I think you leave us all with a sense of urgency. I think as we that to make our impact once we have finished this chat. So thank you so much for your. I really like the buffet example analogy. Sagar, for you as well. Any response you wanted to give or last thoughts you wanted to share?
Yeah. So rather than responding to question, I think few people have asked me and I have responded. I'll just end with, I think there is an urgency that so many of you who are here as female founders like Lareb, like Esmeralda, come forward. It's gonna be a tough journey, but that journey needs to be taken if we want to have a much more equal and equitable world. And also somebody I know personally, her name is Aarti Vig. In one of these sessions on gender lens, she brought something very interesting that male leadership has been very toxic and has failed the world in many ways. So we want to have a world which is more equitable, where feminine leadership and female leadership also comes, where we talk about more empathetic leadership, where we talk about conscious capitalism. So I think it's a very important torch that female founders need to take a charge on. Gonna be a tough journey. But there are organizations like Youth Collab, people like us who are trying to support it. I'm also trying to support it because I'm not that very strong male who has this male chauvinism. So I'm more over a feminine and I believe in gender fluidity. So for me, I think it's very important that we have both views going on in the end. I would love to see more people.
Thank you, Sagar. I think for me, actually, you being a feminist makes you a stronger male than maybe some of the other men we have in our societies. So thank you for that. And I think it's always very encouraging to hear. I think the support you've been given and maybe some of the outspoken things. You started off, I think, earlier to saying that you were going to maybe be somewhat, I think you said insensitive or politically incorrect by saying you were a feminist.
Yeah, on upset it politically incorrect by saying feminist, not a gender activist.
No, I was just going to say, I think actually you've been a really great contribution. So thank you so much for joining us. And I think we're very happy to have had you with us today. Go, I hope you have had the chance to also look at the text a little bit more. So I think for you as well, if there's any questions you still want to answer or just final thoughts.
Well, I think if any young and driven and smart women wanting to have an advice, I'd say, well, look, there are all these fantastic people ahead of you who had succeeded and being very, making a progress and achieving, but they are still very caring, right? And I'd say, well, so you can have them both. Go and get them. That's what I'll say.
Thank you, Ko. I think that's a very nice note to end on. So I think, and I'm really sorry everyone for going a little bit over time. I just wanted to do a quick last pitch. So on the Youth Collab website, there's a now dedicated gender page where, as I already said, the story of for the story of Esmeralda is there already, and the story of Barat will be there soon. So I hope you will eagerly read that soon. I think the link to the site is being shared in the chat at the moment. There's also the quiz that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to, anyone that I can see, I'll ask you later how you did on the quiz, and I'm hoping and expecting high scores. Please keep an eye on that site, because I think both with the UNDP Gender team, but also with other partnerships, I think we're hoping to really continue this conversation and make sure that this is not a one-off event, but part of a broader journey. So please keep an eye on the site so that we can all sort of continue this dialogue beyond there. And then I think that's it. I want to thank Laura, Esmeralda, Sagar, and Go. Thank you so much for being with us today and for being such inspirational speakers. I think you've already heard many comments on that in the chat. I also want to thank my colleagues who are often in the room, particularly Ellie and Shama, for being part of organizing this. And I think to end with, on behalf of Youth Collab and the UNDP Gender team, thank you all for joining, and really hope to see you again soon. So have a wonderful afternoon or evening, I think already for some, and I think maybe nice lunch. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.